Hey, it's JayMac with another edition of Joyful Parents. Today, I want to have a very important discussion with you about mental health. Now, mental health was not something that was ever mentioned when I was growing up. I'm going to guess, if you're my age, I'm 52, that when you were younger, mental health was never part of the discussion or the equation. And we were told when we had problems, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and grow up and be a man. And we were told all of those things. And I have to tell you, well into my adulthood and as a parent, I continued to believe those things. And I didn't give a lot of faith and credit into the whole mental health situation. In fact, I'll never forget sitting at the dinner table with my oldest daughter, and she told me that she thinks she suffers from depression. And I told her, no, you don't suffer from depression. You just need to work harder. You just need to pull yourself up. I did that right to her face. And of course, she started to cry. She left the table. And it was not one of my finest moments, I'll be totally honest with you, because I've learned a lot since then. And I have realized that I was terribly wrong since that time. And believe it or not, have come to the understanding that I have faced certain types of mental illness myself my entire life. And so this discussion about mental illness is very important. And let me see if I can illustrate it in talking about one of my children. Now, just so you know, my children are aware of everything we talk about on this channel. They have my permission to talk about these things that they went through. I don't share it by name, but they know that I am talking about issues that they've faced and I have faced. So with my son, my only son, we were having trouble getting him to go to school. This was when he was in high school. He was cutting class. He wasn't doing his homework. He was doing everything he could to get out of doing what we felt he needed to do. And of course, at this time, I was resorting to the one tool that I had in my belt, and that was I was yelling at him. And I would yell, and I would yell, and I would yell. And of course, yelling did nothing. And we've talked about yelling in past podcasts. This is one of the reasons why I've decided that yelling is absolutely not the right course of action. And one day somebody suggested to us, have you had him looked at for mental health? If you ever had him talk to a psychologist or anything like that? And we're like, no, we're parents. We know how to raise our children. We don't need any help. And eventually my wife said, well, maybe we should. And so somebody gave us a recommendation, and my son agreed to go. And within 15 minutes of sitting in the room with this psychologist, he was able to identify some very critical things about my son. First of all, that he had a heightened sensitivity to bright lights and loud noises. And there were several other things that came up during this time. Now, what is high school? It's bright lights and it's loud noises. And here I was thinking that this was just my stubborn teenager who just didn't want to do what I wanted him to do. He was being lazy, and so he wasn't going to class, and so I was going to yell him out of those things. And suddenly I find out that he has these issues. And there were some other things that were really interesting, like he would always wear a coat and a hoodie. In summer, in the heat, in winter, and we're like, he's just being a punk. It's just fashion. And it turns out that this is part of the issues, that the coat makes him feel more secure, and that the hoodie reduces the light. And then he was always wearing headphones and listening to music. And we're like, come on, dude, we're talking to you. You can't just always have your headphones in. Participate in the world. Well, guess what? The headphones are for to reduce loud noises. He never wanted to go to movies with us, to the movie theater. And we're like, why don't you want to be with your family? And it turns out that movie theaters, the noise is so loud that it makes him incredibly uncomfortable. Now, we didn't know any of these things. And so here we are thinking we just have a punk son who is just avoiding everything that we want him to be. And as you can imagine, I felt like such a tremendous idiot once I realized that he had these issues. Now, the beauty of that is that when we finally realized what was going on, now instead of being his adversary, I could be his advocate. I could be his cheerleader. We could find ways for him to go to school where he wasn't experiencing those things, like online school. We weren't mad at him when he was wearing his headphones. We weren't mad at him when he was wearing his coat in the middle of summer. We understood when he stayed home when we'd go and see a movie. All of a sudden, all of these things that had become a conflict between me and my son were gone. And I have to tell you, this was such an incredible breakthrough for me, because can you imagine if even to this day I was trying to yell him in to being the man that I wanted him to be? We would have no relationship whatsoever. Instead, I have a cherished relationship with my son, and he knows that I understand him, and I don't ask him to do things that I know are outside of that zone. Now, we do try and get him help so that he can gradually try and grow and progress, because there are things that you can change when you're in these circumstances. But what a breakthrough. And I think a big part of this is that it kind of is something in our culture where we believe that we should be able to raise our own children without any help. And honestly, I'm not sure where that comes from, because most of us, or a lot of us, were raised, like in my situation, in just a terrible parenting scenario. So why would I feel like that I could raise my children without any outside help? And we see it as weakness when we have to look outside for help. Like if we have to get a counselor involved for our children, it's somehow a poor reflection on us that we're not doing the right things and we should know. But I mean, come on, we gotta all give ourselves a break here. I mean, the reality is there is no book for parenting. And the other thing is that every child is different. They're all unique, and we're kind of led to believe that you can just parent them all the same. And my friends, that's such a lie. That is such a myth. What works wonderfully on one child is gonna work terribly on the other. And you have to be able to pivot and to adjust. And so you can tell that my whole position on mental health and mental illness has changed dramatically as a result of my son, and also seeing the impact on my daughter, who told me she was depressed and I was an idiot and told her that she wasn't. And that became a gap between our relationship. Once she started to seek help and get medication, and seeing the change that was reflected in her life, I realized, wait a minute, there's something going on here. Now, I do believe that in society there is a rush to treat anxiety too quickly. There's a rush to say, oh, it's mental, it's something going on in your brain, and not something that you should learn how to cope with. And I do think trying to medicate a problem away only without counseling and those types of things, I think that those are some of the errors that we make in our society. But I have also come to believe, we accept that the heart can have illness. We accept that the lungs can be bad, that the liver, we accept that any part of our body can have health issues. But when it comes to the brain,